the advice I'm going to give you guys tonight is that it's really a good idea to define your future and to have a game plan for your career. But you'll see why it's important to have thought through as much of this as you can before you write your essays and before you get to school, both for yourself and for the admissions process. So that's what we're talking about tonight. So here's our agenda. Why goals matter. This is in the context of the MBA application process. Then we're going to look at the personal statement, just really clearly what it is, what's it all about, and what are the ways you need to think about answering those questions. And then we're going to look at some typical goal problems and solutions that I see as I work with clients in this process. I'm just going to ask you all, I expect you to have a lot of questions tonight like you did a week ago, and so that Kelly and I can do our best to manage them and answer as many as you have. What I'd like you to do is either write them down, like type them in a Word document and then put them forth at the end, or at least just be sure to type them in the Q&A box at the very bottom and not the chat box. And that way we'll hopefully be able to get to them at the end. All right. So let's do a quick poll here. Always like to start with a poll. So do you know your goals? All right, so everybody, do we have the poll? There it is. There it is. All right, so everybody go ahead and answer this. What will you do immediately after your MBA? Okay, so the first is the most certain. You know exactly what company you want to work for and how to get a job at that company. And it ranges from there all the way down to you know what you don't want, but you haven't figured out what you do want. Okay, so no one would blame you for applying to business school to get away from what you're doing now. As you heard from Bridget, that was exactly her situation. She was trying to move, away from something she didn't like. She didn't know exactly where she was headed. And a lot of people start in that place, so there's nothing wrong with having that motivation or being that place, but it's important to know where you are now so that you can make a little bit of progress between now and your MBA. Okay, so let me just pause and be quiet while you find yourselves. This is an important poll. All right. Okay, you can go ahead and show the answers whenever you think the right time is. And as we wait for the poll, I will keep talking. So here's what you're getting yourself into here. This is the budget. This came from Chicago Booth's website. This is where I went to school. You all probably know that. And this is their current recommended budget for how long do you think this is for? Type in the chat box. How long do you think this budget will sustain you at Booth? Yeah, 1 year. Very good. You guys got it. This is the 1 year budget for Booth. It's actually 9 months because they do three-month quarters per year. So this is your budget for 9 months. Whatever you're going to do for the summer, wherever you think you're going to live, that's not included here. So summer rent's not included. I highlighted personal and transportation orange because these numbers are laughably low. These are laughably low. I guarantee you, if you go to Booth or a similar program, you're going to spend a lot more money on socializing, traveling with your friends, doing treks. Transportation at $1,500 is really a joke. I don't even think you can commute to campus for that little a year. So this number is low at best. I'm telling you this not because I want to talk you out of it. Obviously, I think this is a great investment, but it is an investment. And that's the point I want to make here. So although the cost of the MBA continues to rise, I've personally never met someone who regretted the decision to get an MBA. Most of my personal network is MBAs. A lot of my friends are MBAs, and all of my clients, all the people I work with, are MBAs, and not a single one of them has ever regretted it. So it's a worthwhile investment, but here's the point. If you're going to maximize your return on that investment, you need to have a game plan. And this is not, you need a game plan not just for the story you're going to tell the admissions committee. You need it for yourself because you're spending all this money. You're making an investment. You would never invest in a business that didn't have a business plan, right? You would never go give $100,000 to a business that didn't have a business plan. So why would you spend that same amount of money without having your own game plan? So that's really what we're talking about here tonight, is putting together your game plan, not just for the purposes of writing your personal statement, but really for yourself so that you can make the absolute most of this huge but really worthwhile investment in an MBA. So I'm looking at the polls here. We just the answers are in, and so a few of you really know exactly where you're going. It's a total of 7 of you, and then the rest of you are kind of moving in the right direction of goals, and some of you are kind of right at the beginning, and then, as always, some of you didn't answer. So wherever you are on the goal refinement spectrum, you want to pay attention tonight and see what are the actions you need to take to get clearer about your plans and your goals, and then make sure that your current thinking lines up well with the advice I'm going to give you tonight, because not all goals are created equal. All right, so the point of a game plan is really just that you have a best guess, okay? Everyone knows that once the players get on the field, all bets are off and everything changes. And that's true in life too. You can have the clearest, most specific goals, and even if you achieve those goals, the path to the outcome is not going to be what you predict. Life is full of surprises, twists, and turns. So the point of this is not to lock anything in stone. It's not to make any commitments or promises. It's really just to put together your best guess about the path you're going to take to get what you want. And you'll want to revisit this periodically. This is life advice, not admissions advice, because, of course, things do change. And you always want to stay true to your values and what you really want. The game plan is just the most logical pathway from here, given the information you have. And the 3 pieces of a game plan are the long-term vision. And, of course, for the purposes of admissions, you want to make sure that that long-term vision necessitates an MBA. In other words, it's a job that you probably couldn't do or couldn't get without an MBA. You need to have a medium-term strategy that gets you going in that direction, and then you need some short-term tactics to get that first MBA job. Most of you probably have one of these figured out, but probably not more than one. And some of you may have all of these figured out. You just want to locate yourself here. You want to figure out where you are and where you need to grow to keep moving. All right, so let's talk about internships. So while it's true that you have the first year to take a variety of classes and get to know a lot of different aspects of business at most schools, there's some very important dates on this chart that I want you to be aware of. And the first one is October 17th. So this is the Harvard recruitment schedule. This is actually from their website. It's from last year, but this year will be really similar to this. So you get to campus and classes begin August 27th. 6 weeks later, your resume is released to recruiters. That's when things start to get real. Your name has to be in the resume book, and recruiters will receive that book. They'll start looking at who's in there and making invitations for special company events, networking, so forth and so on. Those events are going to be important because it's part of how you build relationships and move towards getting your summer internship. So the fact that you only have 6 weeks before your resume is due is really important, because in order for your resume to be in the resume book, first of all, you need to have revised it several times, and that process, Harvard happens to have coaches. It takes you 2-3 weeks to revise your resume. But before you can even revise it, you need to decide what's going to be on it. And to know what's going to be on it, you really need to have a pretty good sense of where you're headed. For example, if you plan to go into management consulting, you need to have the management consulting club on your resume. That's how you will get their attention. That's how you signal that you're interested in management consulting. And if you have the management consulting club on your resume, you probably shouldn't have the banking and finance club on your resume as well, because then it looks like you don't really know what you want to do and you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. So you need to have made some pretty important decisions within about 6 weeks of getting to campus. This is give or take at different schools. Some schools it's a little bit faster, some schools it's a little bit slower. At the Chicago schools, it's even faster because you start later. The Chicago schools start at the end of September. So it's really only 3 weeks that you have to start making some of these important decisions. All of this, I know this is probably scary news. When I first looked at this information and tried to put myself in your shoes, I would have been terrified if I had known this before I got to business school. I didn't know this, and as a result, I found myself scrambling and really trying to figure things out with not enough time and not enough resources. And here's why. The MBA really is a paradox. Every one of you is going to business school, at least in part, because you want to expand your horizons. You want to open new doors. You want to explore and learn more about yourself and the world. That's a valid part of the MBA. But recruiting starts fast. It really does. If you're targeting a mainstream internship, and by mainstream I mean an internship that's recruited for on campus, consulting, banking, marketing, finance, other roles like that, you need to be ready to chase down that internship within a few weeks. And the internship isn't binding. You can always go from your internship to a different full-time job. People do that. But it's also, the internship is also an important way to establish yourself within a firm that you might like to join post-MBA. So there's quite a bit of tension here between your desire to play the field, so to speak, and your need to commit. And so if you want to be able to do both of these things, and you should absolutely explore when you're in business school, but if you want to be able to do that, you need to keep this in mind so that you don't get blindsided by it. And again, this is what the game plan is all about. So this is why you need the game plan. So the long-term vision is your ultimate career destination. The midterm strategy is one or two specific post-MBA industries, functions, and jobs. And then again, the tactics are the concrete actions you're taking to earn that job. Why business schools ask about your career plans? Most schools will ask you about your goals and about why you want to go to their program, whether they do it in an essay form or just in the interview form. This is going to come up for every school. And the reason they want to know this is because think about the investment you're making in yourself. They're making a similar investment in you. They have a very limited number of seats in their prestigious program, and they want to make sure that if you're one of the people who gets one of those spots, that they really believe in your vision for the future. They want to empower people who are going to succeed and who are destined for greatness. So your vision is important. They also really care about fit. I'm going to publish a blog post on my blog in the next few weeks about fit. I wanted to get it done for today, but it fell off the list for this week. So stay tuned to my blog. I'm going to talk about what fit means really in detail. But basically, they want to know that you really belong at their school, and they can't assess that unless they understand what you're planning to do after your MBA. And then the other reason that they care about this, and this last one is becoming more and more important. I've been doing this work for 8 years now. This is my 8th season doing admissions. And more I hear people getting feedback from schools that they were rejected or waitlisted because they didn't seem like they were going to be successful in getting the job that they wanted. So schools really care about your success, and they know that recruiting for internships starts pretty much right away. So if you're not already working on some tactics, they're going to be worried that you're not going to succeed, and then, of course, that will make you unhappy, and that's not what they want. They want happy customers. So let's look at the personal statement and see what that's all about. So if you started looking at essay questions from years past or from this year, Columbia, Harvard, and Stanford have all released their questions since we spoke. You'll start to notice that there are some themes. So there's free-form questions, and these are like the Harvard question. Last year it was introduce yourself. This year the question is, what do you want us to know? Then you've got Stanford, what matters most to you and why. This question hasn't changed in several years. This year is no different. So these are kind of free-form questions. Then you've got story questions. Tell us about an experience. And it's just an opportunity for you to tell a story in a pretty linear fashion. And then you've got your personal statement. And this is where you're asked to talk about the why, where you're asked to talk about your goals and why you want to go to that school. So this is the one we're going to talk about tonight. And here are 4 examples of personal statement questions from years both past and current. Just take a moment. I'm going to be quiet for a second. Just take a moment and read all of these to yourself briefly. Just kind of notice how similar they are. Notice what they have in common. Type in the chat box, if you would. What do you notice that these questions all have in common? Why the school? Goals? Yep. Word limit? Yeah, pretty similar word limit. Yep. They all want to know why you want to go to that school. They want to know why you want an MBA. Yep. Yeah, good. So notice how the school name actually comes up in each case. So they really do want you to be specific about their school. But they also want to know kind of the whole story of your career. So here's the formula for a personal statement, or also for a game plan. It's the past plus the present equals the future. Future, of course, is your goals. The present is the MBA. It's your tactics. It includes the school and anything else you're doing to get that next job. And then the past is everything that has come before. So in a personal statement, in these questions, even when they don't ask about your past experiences, you still do need to talk a little bit about your past experiences, because otherwise the present and the future won't make any sense. Columbia asks, or at least 2 years ago, they specifically asked about your individual background. This question here, why do you need an MBA to achieve those goals, kind of gets a little bit at where you've come from. The question of what do you hope to gain, again, implies from where you are now. So subtly, the past is implied in these questions, even when it's not being explicitly asked. So it's important to include a little bit about the past. And what part of your past, exactly how much, what information you include, really depends on the choice you make here. So that's where we're going to start. And this equation needs to make sense. The last part of this session is a few goal equations that I frequently see that don't make sense, and how to fix them. And this is important because if these two don't add up to the future, it's gonna be a really tough sell. They're going to have a hard time understanding how you're going to be successful in their program. So you want to start with the future. You want to start with the end in mind. So let's look at that. I kind of recommend, this is how I recommend you approach this, especially those of you who are lower down in that poll, who aren't sure what you want to do. You've narrowed it down a little bit, but you're kind of still without a very firm direction. A great place to start is with your long-term vision. And the idea here is to really just, this is where you get to dream big. This is where you get to really think about, like, what do you really want? What impact do you really want to have? Where do you really want to be 20 years from now? What do you want to achieve with your life? The future should be bright, but it's probably not going to be terribly focused. The long term, of course, it's hard to predict. It's hard to be super specific. So here, let's look at some examples. So these are examples from actual past client essays, successful client essays. So in the long run, I see myself transitioning back into industry where I can find my way to a COO type role, helping an older company transform and compete in an ever-changing marketplace. So you see, this is not, she's not naming the company, she's not even really naming the specific industry. She's just saying basically what kind of job she wants to have and the kind of role she wants to play. What's the meaningful impact that she wants to have? Next one, looking further into the future, I hope the skills and qualities developed at your school will allow me to move, of course that would say the actual name of the school, will allow me to move from finance into a more business-oriented role in operations and strategy. Eventually, I hope to be a CEO. So here you can see the direction is going towards CEO, operations, and strategy. And then finally, transitioning into the luxury goods space will allow me to satisfy my passion and apply my ambition to a field I deeply care about to support my longer-term goal of establishing a brand of luxury goods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you see, the long-term goals are not terribly specific and detailed, but they're clear. It's easy to see what these people care about, where they're headed, where they see themselves, and what they really want. So this is a good place to start. And if you're not here, maybe you have your next job clarified. You know exactly what you want to do post-MBA, but you haven't figured out your vision. This is still something you'll definitely want to think about. Once you have a vision in mind, if you're working through this according to my framework, the next step is to be pragmatic about the medium and short term. So you have the long-term vision, you want to be the COO, you want to be the CEO, but obviously you're not going to get that job right after business school. So what are one or two post-MBA jobs that fulfill the following three criteria? First of all, you want to make sure it actually moves you a big step closer to your long-term vision. The second is that recruiters from those jobs actually come to your target schools. This is a really important thing to look into as you're doing your research. You don't want to say that you want to go work for a tech startup to a school where no tech startups recruit. It's important to really match what you need to the schools that you apply to. And then finally, you need to be a credible candidate for those jobs given your background. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. It doesn't mean that you can't change careers. Of course you can change careers. That's what 80% of MBAs do. It just means that you need to have a foothold. You need to have some skills to show that you'll be able to leverage in those jobs. By the way, I'm giving two kinds of advice in this conversation. On the one hand, I'm giving advice about how to write your personal statement and how to put together a picture that will make sense to the admissions committee. But at a deeper and far more important level, this is actually advice about how to think about making powerful career choices that really get you where you want to be. Okay, so that's really more the spirit of what I'm talking about, but it turns out that those two things actually overlap. So in terms of talking about your midterm goals, more or less detail may be required. So this is where some people are going to need to talk a lot about their post-MBA job, and other people won't have to talk as much. And which category you fall into depends on where you're coming from and where you're going. So here's the first one. Post-MBA, I will join a top management consulting firm, and further down the road, I will assume an operational role, most likely in Europe, with an innovative consumer-facing company. Okay, so this candidate was a very strong fit for management consulting, strong intellect, strong problem-solving, global experience. Didn't have to say a whole lot about that goal because it was a clear fit. It was a clear next step. The next person, on the other hand, was making a radical career switch. So this is what she said. I'm seeking a role with broad exposure to the product life cycle, such as brand management or new product development. My immediate post-MBA goal is to join a reputable firm that is diversified across product categories, such as Unilever, P&G, or Honest Company. Alternatively, I would seek a role in a boutique management consulting firm focused on the consumer goods industry. You see how the second one has a plan B implied in the goals, and this is again evidence of a strong midterm strategy. If the job you want is a far step from where you are, it shows that you're really thinking about it and that you understand that aspect of what you want, and you're willing to take an alternative path if it doesn't work out. So the more you can think through what it's actually going to take to get to where you want to go and have some clear actions in place, the more likely you are to get there. And then you want to start implementing tactics. So start now. You guys are already doing this through the launch program, through listening to people's MBA stories. I loved what Bridget said about how she asked people the tough questions about what the job was like and how much they made. And I encourage you guys to do all of that, but don't wait until you get to campus. Do it now. So learn more about the jobs that you're interested in through informational interviews. This is something that might even come up in your MBA interview. They might ask you, exactly what have you done to explore this career that you think you want? You wouldn't be the first person to get that question. I think you guys have read, I think I've given you a link to my informational interview blog post, but there it is in the chat box. If you have any doubts about what an informational interview is or are concerned that you might not be making the most of the opportunity, check that out. Build up relevant skills and knowledge. Start doing this now. Do it during your MBA and do it now. And then start building your network in your target industry. So no matter where you are now, think about where you want to go and start building connections there. Forte provides a great platform for you to do that. The school is really where the majority of your short-term tactics are going to happen. So the classes you take, the professors you're going to work with, the clubs you join, the co-curricular activities you participate in, the social activities you engage with, and the culture and the community of the school that you attend will form the majority of your short-term tactics. So as you're writing your business school essays, you want to be pretty detailed about how the school fits in to your plan. So here's an example. Using the skills learned in my global experiences, I will harness the potential of the CBS-NYC symbiosis. Columbia's real-world connections are palpable. Master classes such as Professor Dugan's Strategic Intuition Consulting Lab will improve my resourcefulness and creativity while letting me work and network with potential future employers. Attending the World Leaders Forum or the Sylphan Leadership Series will be eye-opening, while company visits will derive into professional opportunities. The Columbia and NYU are global. Consequently, engaging the Chazen Institute to gain cross-cultural business perspectives will also help me discover and seize the world of opportunities in New York through the power of CBS. I bolded the specific terms, the things that are very specific to Columbia. You notice how if I took out the word CBS and put in the word HBS, this essay would make no sense. And that's how yours needs to read. When you talk about the school and exactly what you hope to gain there, in other words, what your tactics are to prepare yourself for those jobs, it should be concrete and specific to that program. There should be no confusion that you copied and pasted your Columbia essay into the Tuck essay. If you need to research schools, I recommend that you download one or more of the MBA Mission Insiders Guides. I'm going to put the link to those in the chat box. These are truly extraordinary resources, like up to 100 pages of painstakingly researched information about these top programs. It's really pretty much everything you would need to read, everything you would need to know to write a personal statement for a given school. So check those out. Obviously, you still want to visit campus, you want to get to know students, you want to do your own research, but those guides are really, really helpful. Okay. All right. So once again, your complete game plan is your big dream for the future, what you ultimately want, where you see yourself in the long term. Your midterm strategy is a clear post-MBA target role for which you are a viable candidate and which the school can help facilitate. And then the short-term tactics are concrete actions you're taking already to earn the post-MBA job. Include things like informational interviews, networking, and also how you will use the school's resources to earn that opportunity. All right, so that's the game plan. That's the personal statement. I believe I'm coming back in July to lead one more webinar about essay mapping and choosing how to answer the questions really more from a writing perspective. So I'll say a little bit more about how to write a personal statement at that time. But the focus tonight is really more about your plan, your vision, your strategy, and your tactics. And these are things that you can be working on now, even before you sit down and start writing the essays. So let's talk about some common problems I see with people's goals, all right? And we're just going to map these to the game plan. So some people have no vision. In other words, I have no idea what I want to do. I just know it's not this. Then you've got poor midterm strategy. So this is a banker or an accountant who generally wants to have an impact on education. And then finally, no tactics. So what is management consulting? And the overnight entrepreneur. We're going to talk through each of these examples. And these are just I've just chosen, these are not the only version of the problems that I've seen. I'm just choosing specific examples to make it really clear. So this is not to penalize bankers or people who want to do consulting. It's just so that you understand the message here. Okay, so if you're thinking, do I have to have goals? Or what does School X want to hear? Or you know what, I just want to get an MBA to learn more and open up new doors. Screw the future. You wouldn't be alone. If this is what you thought going into this process, you would not be alone. In fact, you'd be in great company. There'd probably be 50% or more of MBA applicants who at the very least started in this position, and even many who ended up in this position when they wrote their essays. So if this is where you are, then you don't have clearly defined goals yet. Not a problem. Start by identifying a professional passion. Here's the problem. Here's the problem that you guys face. I have so much. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm just a tiny bit out of Generation Y, which I assume most of you are members of. But I gotta say, I have a lot of empathy for you guys, because you have a problem that human beings have never faced really in the history of humanity, which is that it's very obvious that anything is possible. You know, we live in pretty good times. We're not fighting lions, and we're not, you know, for the most part, engaged in any kind of world wars. So what we're really engaged in right now is fulfilling our potential. And it means that you have to confront the fact that your potential truly is infinite. You can achieve anything. You can do anything you want with your life. Where the heck are you going to start? It's much easier to be given 2 or 3 options, not an infinity of options. And that's really what you all are facing. I see it every year in my clients, the level of anxiety that you have at the astonishing possibilities in front of you and having to make up your mind with very little to go on, very little information, and very little support because, even my generation didn't have that problem. So we don't really know what to tell you. So this is the problem you have, and you're not alone if that's how you feel. So here are some tricks. Here are some tricks you can try to start to focus in on what might be your unique path. All right, you can start from where you are. That's a good place to start. And if you've been working with the Explore Your Experiences document, you've been answering some questions along these lines. So what types of tasks have you most enjoyed? What are you already doing that you're passionate about? What are the kinds of problems that you naturally find yourself drawn to solving? Start with what you know and what you love. That's one way to do this, is to look at that and then extrapolate that into the future. Well, how could I be doing more of that? What kinds of jobs give me the chance to have more authority over that? Where can I have more creative freedom in the tasks that I already like? That's one way to start. Another way to do it is to start the other way, to begin with the end in mind. So these are some exercises I do with my clients to help them figure out their vision. You could work with the retirement speech question. In other words, imagine that there you are, you're on your deathbed and you're looking back, or you're at your retirement. Either way, whatever's more powerful, and you're looking back on your life. What would you regret not having accomplished? What would you regret not being able to say that you did with your life? That's another good place to start. Ask this question: what do you want? Because desire truly is the beginning of all new creation. You need to really get in touch with what you want. And not just what you want for yourself, but actually what you want for the world. And I think this is a really cool framework to help home in on your unique passion. And many of you have probably seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs before. I think this is a really brilliant model of human evolution. And basically what he says is that, look, if you don't have food and water, forget about creativity, okay? You have to start at the bottom. And then once each subsequent set of needs is met, then you can move on to the next level. So if you look at me, if you look at my job and what I'm doing, you can easily tell that this is the level I'm most interested in. The thing I care about and the thing I've dedicated my career to is helping people self-actualize, helping people access their creativity and make the contribution that they have to make in this life. That's what I'm really passionate about. You, on the other hand, might be down here. The thought of starving babies in an undeveloped country might actually keep you up at night and make you so mad that you're willing to dedicate your entire life to solving that problem. Now, it's not that you don't care about creativity, and it's not that I don't care about people starving, but there's a difference between what matters to you and where you're going to actually dedicate your waking hours. And we each have a song to sing. We each have a role to play. So think about which part of the human experience are you most compelled to help other people fulfill? Do you want people to have jobs, to be secure in their lives? Do relationships matter more to you? Do you want to make sure people feel like they belong, like they're included? Or are you like me, really passionate about this top piece, self-actualization? So this is another good place to start to really help you set your compass point. Where are you headed? And then you can begin to map this to actual jobs. So once you find a passion, start looking. What industries and functions line up with your passions? What are some short-term steps that get you closer to your desire for long-term impact? What do those jobs actually look like? Ways to do this research. Do not neglect first-person research, primary research. Talk to your friends, your colleagues, your mentors. Do informational interviews, leveraging your network. And then there's lots of online resources that you can also use that are a good starting point to get yourself oriented. All right, so once you have a general area, then you can start to drill down and see where it's going to go. So let me give you an example from a client of mine that's really, really interesting that'll get you thinking. So I have this client who is Canadian, and for whatever reason, for her entire life, her entire passion has been about Africa. She's lived in Africa. She spent most of her adult career in Africa. And what she really cares about most is these bottom two. But what she's chosen to do is work for Google, because Google is expanding economic opportunities in Africa by putting very powerful technological tools into the hands of everyone. So she understood that if she goes to work for strategy and product development at Google, that she will be helping people create better lives for themselves. So there are a lot of different ways to achieve the ends that you want to achieve. And a lot of times the best path is not the most obvious one. But this is the kind of work and the kind of thinking that you want to start doing. The good news or bad news is that you are moving into a life of fairly constant change. This is not true for all of you, but a GMAT study from a little while back showed that the average MBA has 3 jobs in their first 10 years post-MBA, and for some people it was way more than that. So this first transition, this first midterm strategy, this first job, it's not the last time you're going to have to go through this. It's not the last time you're going to have to answer this question. How many career changers are there? Let's use the checkbox here, which I think you all know where that is now. Give me a green check mark if you see yourself changing careers post-MBA, if that's part of your goal, it's part of what you want, it's part of your plan, is to change careers, move into a different function, a different industry. Yeah, all right, so I'm looking at the checks, and we've got, so a lot of you aren't answering, but those of you who are answering, it's 80% career changers. And that's as it should be. 80% of MBAs are career changers. So if you're still in the process of thinking through your game plan, if you're interested in help with that, you might want to try my self-awareness protocol. I'm just scratching the surface here in some of the questions that we go through and the type of exploration that's involved. But if this kind of thing seems interesting to you, send me an email. Here's my email address. I only have a few spots for this, so if this is something that's interesting to you, let me know. This is what it includes. It's a detailed summary of your experiences, the nucleus of your personal brand. You get time with me to explore and discuss your vision, values, goals, job search keywords, and career deal breakers, as well as detailed recommendations for tactics and Monday morning actions to help you earn your next opportunity. So send me an email if you want to learn more about that. But let's keep talking about midterm strategy. So I frequently see people who have identified a passion but don't really know how to get there. So here's an example. I'm passionate about education, but I've been in accounting for 3 years. I have no demonstrated extracurricular commitment to education, and I don't know exactly what I will do or what kind of company I will work for. I don't. If you're reading this and sort of laughing, you might be laughing a laughter of recognition, or you might think that person's crazy. How do they think they're going to get an education? but you'd be surprised. You want to apply this lens to yourself. Take a look and see how actually clear is it to you how you're going to get the job that you want. And it's really important to recognize that that on-campus recruiting starts fast, it's competitive, and not every kind of company, not every company recruits at every school. So just getting to business school is really only the first step. It doesn't get you the job. That still is on you. So you really need to think about exactly how are you going to get there. You're going to do a lot more work to get the job once you get to campus. But the more you can do before you go, and the more that can be a part of your process of writing your personal statements, the further ahead you'll be and the more compelling a candidate you'll be. So if you are in this category where you have a clear passion, you're just not really sure exactly what your next step is and how to get there, then start with research. So this is the same research I said before. What do these jobs look like? Do informational interviews. Job shadow someone. Actually get behind the veneer of the job title and figure out what the jobs that might be interesting to you are really all about. And really do leverage people. The best source of information for this kind of stuff is people, because even these websites will be limited in terms of the texture and detail they can provide. Here's a little framework that might be helpful for you to contemplate. This is the big picture of MBA jobs. So across this top axis, we have the function. All right, so consulting is a function, finance is a function, and as you can see, every single company, every single kind of industry, which is what you have going down the axis, and these are just some. We could add more. We could break this up. I'm just kind of presenting a redacted picture so the matrix is clear. There's finance within financial services, of course. There's finance in a consumer company. There's finance in a technology company, and so forth and so on. And so each of these functions exists within each of these industries. Of course, consulting is kind of out here on its own, because although there is finance, marketing, and general management within consulting, that work is all done by people whose title is consultant. So it's kind of just more consulting, really. So this is where you want to locate yourself in a specific box on this matrix. So if you want to go into technology, what kind of a job do you want to have? Do you want to be in finance in a technology company? Or do you want to be in marketing? You want to locate yourself in one discrete box. Importantly, if you're thinking about a good midterm strategy, like a strong one, a solid one that is going to be a credible pathway, it's best to only change one axis at a time. So let me give you an example of that. So if you're currently in financial services, all right, so here's our accountant or banker who's going to business school, it's good to stay within your function and just change industries. So now you're taking all of your finance skills and you're just applying them to a new industry. It's a one-directional move. This is a good midterm strategy. This, on the other hand, moving from financial services to marketing in technology, you see how I've changed on both axes at the same time. This is possible, but it's risky. So it's risky because your level of transferable skills is less, and even when it's there, it's not so apparent. Okay, so moving from investment banking to tech marketing is a big, big shift. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not telling you not to make this kind of shift. If this is the shift you have in mind, I'm not telling you not to make that shift. I'm just telling you you really need to work hard and have all your ducks in a row to make this happen. This means that your short-term tactics, this person's going to have to work a lot harder in the short term, both before and during their MBA, to set themselves up for success in this job, both to achieve the job and to do it well, than someone who's making, say, this change. Okay, this change is going to be much easier to make. And all of this affects your candidacy because, again, if you're saying that you want to go from accounting to tech marketing, that's only going to make sense in terms of the equation past plus present equals the future. That equation's only going to make sense if you've really done your research and you understand what are the companies that are out there. Do they recruit on campus? What do they look for? What are the skills that you already offer those firms that they want for a marketing job? What are the gaps? What are the things you need to learn right away in business school to be a compelling candidate for the internship? What are some of the things you can be doing now? Can you go to startup meetups? Can you take some coding classes? Can you get involved in the social media execution marketing of your company? What are the things you need to do to prepare yourself for this role? So the harder the transition, the further away you're going from the box you're in now, the harder you have to work. Again, doesn't mean don't do it. If this is what you want to do, go for it. Just recognize that you need to have all this stuff lined up and be ready to talk about it. So here's some good midterm ideas for the accountant turned education leader. Finance in a large nonprofit education organization like a for-profit company like Kaplan. Join the foundation team of a major education endowment. Join a for-profit education startup and offer your finance skills. Take a finance role in a large education nonprofit. Notice how all of these have the word finance, foundation implies finance, bolded. And that's because you're staying in your function. You're just moving into the space that you're more interested in. Another alternative, and this is something I sometimes recommend to people, is that they shouldn't apply to business school now. If you really want to do that, take some other action first and then go to business school. TFA is just one example, but this is something to consider for your process as well. And then be sure your tactics are in motion. I'm not kidding. I had a client last year who got waitlisted at a top 20 school, not even a top 10 school. Got waitlisted at a top 20 school because in the interview they asked her what network she had. What was the network she had in the industry that she wanted to go into? And she told them that she was counting on the school to help her cultivate that network. And they waitlisted her because they thought, well, she hasn't really done her work and we're not sure she's going to succeed. That's exactly what they told her. So get in motion with your tactics. Start doing informational interviews. If you're planning to go into education, get exposure now. Start volunteering. Do something to get yourself immersed in the thing that you think you want to do. Begin building a network. This is especially important if you're going to go into a job that isn't a mainstream recruitment on-campus kind of job. So if you're planning to go into education, you're probably going to need to source your own opportunity. Whatever company you work for is not going to just parachute onto campus and pick you up. You'll have to go out there and find it. And then, of course, talk to current students and alums in that field from your target schools. Understand their path. How did they get, what was their first job? How did they get to where they were going? I know my tone is, I can't really read your emotions, but I'm guessing that I'm scaring you guys a little bit with this information. Even as I'm listening to myself, I sound very stern. So I hope I'm not scaring you too much. It's important to have the right perspective on this. I don't mean to scare you. But what you're actually going to find if you start getting into this stuff is that it's actually fun. Because the bottom line is all of this is really in service of what you love. It's in service of what matters to you. And it's here to help you succeed in fulfilling your potential. So, be afraid if you like, but have fun, actually. Once you start learning about the jobs you want, the fear will go away and you'll actually get really excited about it. So, if your first choice goal is not short-term credible, you leverage the medium term. All right. So if what you really want is to be the executive director of an education nonprofit, and you're an accountant, that's not a terribly credible career switch, because you just don't have all the skills you're going to need to manage an entire organization when all you've done so far is accounting. So think about, what are the interim steps that you can take? What is a first job and a second job that could get you closer to where you want to be, that will help you build relevant skills and develop necessary relationships and connections. And then, it's important to think about, are there better target short-term roles or companies that still express your passion, that still align with your values, and get you moving in the direction you want to go. Okay, the next, and then use this matrix to help plan. So if this is your role and this is your goal, make it a 1-2 step. Yeah, make it a 1-2 step. Or, if you feel like you really want to do it this way, that's fine. Just make sure that you're taking the appropriate steps, that you're using your tactics. All right, so the next goal problem is non-credible goals, or in other words, weak tactics. So a lot of people say they want to go into consulting, but they don't really know what it is, and they don't have the profile that stereotypically appeals to consulting firms. And to disabuse any mystery, star performers with high stats, high grades, and high GMAT. That's kind of what they're looking for. I want to start my own company, but I've only ever been an employee. I have no specific target company I want to start, and I haven't shown entrepreneurial spirit at work. So these are just 2 examples of non-credible short-term goals, and let's talk about how to fix them. So let's play a quick round of Jeopardy. Here's the answer, 33%. What's the question? Type it into the chat box. What do you think the question is that goes with this? What does the number 33% represent? Nobody wants to guess. I've terrified you all. What percent of students are career changers? Nope. So it's career changes are about 80%. You're looking at the GMAT. Nope, it's not related to the GMAT. People have a new job. Oh, that actually might be true also, Victoria. I'm not sure. People who have a different job 3 years out of school. That's also probably true, actually, but I don't have any of that data. All right, so here, I'll give you the answer. It is the percent of people from top MBA programs that go into consulting. Consulting has kind of fallen out of favor. It's no longer the sexy choice. Now the sexy choice is technology, product development, operations in a tech company. Tech companies have changed the world, and so that's kind of where people seem to want to go. But 33% of your MBA classmates are probably going to join consulting firms. And that is actually a very good idea. People love consulting, MBAs love consulting, because it helps you build more skills, it integrates your MBA learnings, it opens new doors. And look, here's the consulting matrix. So consulting can go anywhere. Consulting is the one exception to the matrix rule, because especially if you're working for a top consulting firm, you're getting exposure to all industries and all functions. And if you want to specialize at the consulting firm before you leave and then transition, kind of the world is your oyster. I've had colleagues from BCG go on to be directly into CEO roles, directly into government roles, you name it. You can go anywhere from consulting, and this is really why it's still the number one choice. It's hard work, it's long hours, but for most people, myself included, it's worth it. It's a worthwhile investment. But if consulting is where you want to go, or if it's really not where you want to go, either way, people seem to be polarized on that. Be sure you understand why. Be sure you understand why you want to do it or why you don't want to do it. So there are a lot of differences between professional services firms and industry, right? So in professional services firms like consulting or finance, it's an up or out culture. It's fast paced. There's always something new. Your boss changes on every project. There's nothing that you're really building. You have to be completely responsible for your relationships and staffing. It's a lot more entrepreneurial in a specific way than industry jobs could be. And then industry, on the other hand, your roles tend to be more specialized. Every firm and department is different. Relationships are more fixed. Typically, you stay in a role a bit longer. You have an opportunity to build, innovate, and lead, typically sooner, and typically in a major way. So these are kind of the puts and takes of these different choices. There are different paths to the top. So a consulting firm is pretty much straight up. The path to the top, it's roughly 7 years, and it's roughly 15% of the people who start at a consulting firm make it to the top. Industry, on the other hand, it's a little more circuitous. You might move functions even. You might move around within your department. You might start with strategic projects in finance, then manage mergers and acquisitions, then ultimately find yourself in a CEO role. It's not so linear. You have to find your own way. Here, all you have to do is kill it. All you have to do is be awesome and build the right relationships. Here, you might have to make some creative choices. Just some of the differences. Whoops, sorry. So from the admissions committee's perspective, the big three firms are really looking for the best of the best. A high GMAT, a high GPA is nearly essential. Relevant experience is also useful. This is not entirely accurate. I did recruiting at BCG for a while, and I know that they hire people that don't have perfect GMAT scores. But from the admissions committee's perspective, they do. And so they're a little bit wrong about that, but they won't be dissuaded. So if you don't have a really rock-solid profile, saying that you want to go work for one of these firms won't be credible. So if you do want to do consulting, and even if you do want to work for one of those big firms and you don't have the right profile, be sure to include, let's call it a plan B, or be sure to also target some smaller or boutique firms that allow you to leverage your specific expertise. So if you've been in marketing and you want to transition into consulting, your plan B should be a smaller firm that focuses on marketing consulting, retail consulting, consumer goods consulting, something that is a clearly better fit for you. If you don't even know what consulting is, I'm harping on consulting not because it's awesome, although I do think it is awesome. I'm harping on it just as an example. So the detail that I'm going through here, you need to kind of look at this with respect to each job path that you're considering. I happen to know more about consulting because this is what I've done. So what even is consulting? Really, most people don't know. Even some people who've had the job don't know what it is. Consulting is outsourced. I like to think it is outsourced brains for tricky or sensitive problems. So in other words, you're advising clients on strategic changes and developing analytical answers to client questions. It includes a lot of sexy projects, but it also includes, downsizing some ugly projects. Increasingly, it includes helping operationalize new strategies. So those are the long-term projects where you're on the road and you're in Omaha for 20 weeks on end implementing changes. So this is just a glimpse into consulting. But again, could you say this about your target job? These are the things you need to figure out. If you want a resource that's a really valuable and free information about I don't have the link. Let me look it up. One moment. So if you want a free resource to take a look at some of the core post-MBA industries, download one of MBA Career Coach's free career primers, and these are all free. So go and grab them now from the website. I mean, they're not going anywhere, but they're all free. And I actually designed these. I wrote the one for consulting, so I can really vouch for them. It's a lot of information about these jobs. So wherever you're at, it will give you a starting point to understand the job, what it takes to get it, whether you're credible, and then, what are the tactics that you want to take to get there. So check those out. Okay, so version 2 of non-credible goals is the overnight entrepreneur. So if you've only ever been an employee and you're not sure exactly what you want to do, then entrepreneurship is just not credible in the short term. It could be credible in the long term, and in fact, I think most people who get an MBA do ultimately belong in some form of entrepreneurship in the long run. Not everybody, but a lot of people. So it should absolutely be on your long-term horizon if it's interesting to you, but just plain not wanting to have a boss is not the same thing as being an entrepreneur, a lesson I myself have learned the hard way. See, I'm more of a don't tell me what to do person. I'm not really an entrepreneur, if I'm honest. So it may well be that you just haven't identified a passion yet, and being your own boss seems like a really good idea. But regardless, it's important to confront the reality. So entrepreneurship is still really not a well-traveled road. Stanford, of course, has the highest percentage of people entering entrepreneurship, but look how small the numbers are for every other school. Some of these schools don't even register. It's like the percentage is so small, and some of these, I can't remember where this data came from. It may well be that these people just didn't report it, but I guarantee you that it's not going to be higher than 5 or 6% at any school. This doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that it's quite a hard road. And most of these people who ended up starting businesses in business school didn't go to business school with that plan in mind. They just got swept up in some kind of a startup competition, or they found some people, started a project, and one thing led to another, and before they knew it, there they were. So it's all of this is to say, if entrepreneurship is on your horizon, be very careful about stating it as your immediate post-MBA goal unless you have other things in place that show that that's where you're headed. If you've already started a couple of companies, then by all means, declare entrepreneurship as your pathway. But if you haven't, you probably want to use the midterm. So here are some options. Get your feet wet now. Forget the MBA. Start something now. Okay, just go start a business now, and then look at the MBA in another year or two. I've had lots of clients who've actually taken this advice, and they're now successful entrepreneurs who never went to business school. An alternative is to take a year and work for a startup, see what it really takes. So do a year transition before you go off and go to business school. If you are sure you want to go to business school now and you want to be an entrepreneur, leverage the short term. Do a stint in consulting to find an industry passion, and then go buy a small business or go assemble a team and start your own company after you've learned a lot more about the business world, made new connections, and found a specific passion that you want to apply yourself to. You might work in a startup post-MBA to build skills and find collaborators, or find whatever midterm step makes sense given your background that moves you towards entrepreneurship in the long run. A really popular goal, short-term goal right now after business school is product management. So this is the new sexy job, product management. People want to go work for Amazon and Amid and manage, Kindle, whatever. Because when you manage a product, it's kind of like being a baby CEO. It's kind of like, you run the whole show for that product. This is the popular job these days. And it's a great interim step if entrepreneurship is where you want to go, because it's kind of like being an entrepreneur within an established company. But again, make sure you're a compelling candidate for those jobs that you're looking for. But sometimes you still have to go back to square one. So we've already talked about how to uncover a passion. So what is it about entrepreneurship that appeals to you? Why would it be fulfilling? What else could you do to find that fulfillment? A good friend of mine was recently featured in the top. This is a really inspiring person. Recently featured in the Poets and Quants Best of the Best class from Wharton, and her whole mantra is all about. I just pasted a link to her profile there in the chat box. Her whole mantra says you don't have to be an entrepreneur to innovate. You can innovate within your organization, and she truly embodies that concept. So check that out if you might find that inspiring. So think about what are the other options. What are the other options to get you moving in that direction, but really make the most of MBA resources. And entrepreneurship is it's great. It's definitely something to consider if that's what you want to do long term. But the MBA itself doesn't do the best job of setting you up for that in the short term. So A+ game plans have strong short-term tactics. In other words, your actions are already in motion. It has a credible midterm strategy, achievable post-MBA role given your background and given the tactics you're taking. So the weaker your background, the stronger the tactics need to be, relative to the position you're seeking. And then an inspiring long-term vision driven by genuine passion and purpose. It's not enough to just have these two. If you're not deeply passionate about something, and I mean, if you're not, everyone is. I know you are. You're deeply passionate and purposeful about something. How clear that thing is will become more so as you go through your career. It's unusual that someone has an answer to that at the beginning of their career. It usually takes a while for your sense of passion and purpose to really evolve. But where you are now, you want to be clear about it. You want to have something that you really care about because it's going to translate into a powerful positive energy in your essays and in your interviews.